to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker and I currently in studio together as we come here to recap day one, sliding slightly into day two of the free agent frenzy. We'll talk a little bit about the draft. I don't know, we can say who we think won the draft, but how about we talk about that in like 3 or 4 years? Then we can talk about who won this draft. Really, there's no way to know. I guess at this point you're going, all right, who picked the highest ranked player the latest? And that's who usually you say won the draft. That's kind of how it works. And the Rangers win because they get the best player in the draft. How about that?
All right, fair. Yeah.
Or at least probably the best player in the draft. Yeah, and as we go, I think the draft maybe plays a little bit of a, like, into this free agency. We can talk about, some players that we think might have a roster shot this year and how that might factor into some free agent signings. But let's just start rolling through all the free agent signings that we've already seen. We'll just talk about the impact we believe that it will have on this team and whether or not we think that the term that they received is fair and all that. So I guess we begin. Man, there's so many players that signed, but the one I want to start with is the Max Domi Josh Anderson trade, and then Josh Anderson getting 7 years, $5.5 million a season for a $38.5 million contract total. For a guy who actually, if you remember back to the expansion draft, Josh Anderson was desperately protected by the Columbus Blue Jackets, and he is the reason they gave up William Karlsson and a first round pick,
right,
to avoid him being taken. So Josh Anderson is just so stinking good. Everyone wants to protect him. His best season 2 years ago, 27 goals, 47 points. Talk to me. I don't understand this.
Yeah, I'm a little lost too. I mean, don't get me wrong. When you look back a few years ago, the NHL was still in this speed, but let's still take the body to guys. And so, yeah, I could see why he would have been a little bit more coveted back then, but the NHL has sort of gone more towards an offensive, very high, fast-paced kind of game. And, I think you look at the Stanley Cup winners over the last few years, outside of maybe Tampa. Well, I mean, you could even throw Tampa in there with their amazing third line of Yanni Gourde and Gaudreau, but, or not Gaudreau, I'm sorry. Yeah, Barclay there, but, there's been more of a need for balance, and I think teams are starting to say, okay, well, St. Louis, Washington, these guys had balance, right? They could play that fast-paced, highly skilled offensive game, but they still could throw the body around a little bit. They still had those lines that could go out there and check and be sort of those grind-you-down sort of lines in the playoffs. And while that didn't really translate in the regular season is good, in the playoffs it's shown up. And so I think maybe Montreal looked at that and said, okay, we got an opportunity. We don't really see Max Domi as a fit long-term here, but we like Josh Anderson. We like what he brings, that intangible. But the problem is he's never healthy for a full season.
Yeah.
So what's the point? You could have easily gone out there and made a trade with maybe another team. You could have maybe gone to, a team like Tampa Bay and said, hey, we understand you got a cap issue right now. Like, hey, are you willing to part with a guy like Yanni Gourde? Probably not. I mean, they would probably say no, but you could explore other options out there to go look at other guys. And then you turn right around within 10 minutes and give him a 7-year extension for buku dollars. Like, that's the same price that Columbus ended up paying for Max Domi, who was just a year or two removed from a 70-point season.
Right. Like, and has never had a season where he played fewer than, his fewest games played is 59 games. That was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
He's played 82, and 71. He's played all in all the games the last 3 seasons. And his worst season was this year, 44 points in 71 games. So likely he would have had close to 50 points by the end of the year, maybe 20 goals. Not as much of a goal scorer Max Domi is, but definitely the setup man. But
no,
hey,
and you know what? He's going to move into center. He's going to be that second line center for this team in Columbus. And I mean, yes, Montreal didn't really use him as a center as much, and I know they were talking about it, before the season ended, that, maybe we're going to move him back to center, blah, 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 blah. But still, like center versus winger, like there's a comparison where you're getting more value for Columbus already.
Yep.
So I don't understand it either. I think, maybe years two or, by year 2 or 3, if he's still healthy, you can say, okay, this has been an all right deal. Yeah. But I guarantee you by year 4, when his body starts wearing and he's getting more and more injured, you're going to be like, what the flip were we thinking?
I mean, hopefully he better blow away. I mean, at $5.5 million, you better be putting up 50 points.
Right.
At like 100%, you need to be putting up 50 points. I mean, if you go and you look at so many different contracts, you look and you see guys are basically getting $100,000 a point. And so if you can't put up, and that's only after a certain point. Like if you're only putting up 20 points, you're not getting 2 million probably. You're probably more in the one something. But if you can put up 40 points, you're probably worth 3.5-4 million. But if you can't put up 55 points and you're making 5.5 million, you better not be getting 32 points. We'll see. I guess that would be better than Matt Duchene, but still. To the goalie point, we had did 3 shows on all the goaltending situation, and we, for the most part, we nailed it on the head. 3 goalies that have signed that I'm thinking Brossois that re-signs in Winnipeg. Leonard, he signs that 5-for-5 deal in Vegas. Brian Elliott re-signs with the Philadelphia Flyers to be backup to Carter Hart, and Tristan Jarry signs with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then Matt Murray gets traded to the Ottawa Senators and gets the biggest deal out of all of them by far. What did you think about that deal? For Murray.
I like the idea of Ottawa trading for him. I thought that was a good move. I didn't see it coming, to be quite honest, because I thought Ottawa was going to be a team where they're going to go look for a goalie with a high cap hit but low real dollar value, so they could get to the floor and then not have to really shell out a bunch of money right now. Because look, Ottawa's got a bunch of young prospects coming up. They had a pretty good draft, right? They're going to have these guys develop over the next 2-3 years before you can look at this team and say, okay, cool, they can compete. They can be a real, contender for a playoff spot, and maybe, even more. But regardless, I mean, don't get me wrong, maybe your Ottawa and your thought process is, we want somebody long-term. We want to get our guy now, lock him in, and then hopefully he develops. But when you got a guy like Matt Murray, who has been injury-prone over the last couple of years, he's on the decline in terms of his stats. I don't know why you're so quick to hand out a large contract to a guy like that when maybe you can say, cool, let's you're qualified, so let's go out and give you your qualifying offer, whatever the arbitrator wants to give you, whether that's 4.5 or maybe even $5 million. Who gives a crap? Take that 1 year, see how he does, and then if he blows it out of the, knocks it out of the park and is playing really, really good, then say, hey, cool, great, let's go ahead and give you that 6-7 year contract. That you probably wanted. But look, last year, or this past season, .899 save percentage. 2 seasons prior, .907. But again, he's not playing he hasn't played more than 50 games in this organization during the regular season.
Right.
Now, I mean, granted, most goalies aren't going to play that now anyways, but for a guy who you're considering your number one, you need him to play 50, 60 games all year.
$6.25 million cap hit. I mean, on the one hand, I get it. Like, Ottawa has to get to the cap floor, so they're maybe going, hey, we can just overpay this guy slightly. It'll make him want to stay. They are paying for some UFA years.
Yeah, maybe the thought process is,
3
when we
UFA
get to
years.
the back end of that deal, the second half, that 6.5 is going to look like a bargain because, maybe he rebounds and finds his way again. But honestly, I would have been a little bit more hesitant to give him such long-term and, give him that kind of money.
Yes. I guess the hope for Ottawa is that all their draft picks hit.
Right.
If Tim Stutzel and Jake Sanderson can come in quickly into this organization, and then you get some of the other guys that you've been grooming over the last couple years that you've drafted. If Ottawa is able to kind of turn this around, I think that Ottawa is in a better position than, say, like Detroit. I don't think that Ottawa was pitiful this year. They were bad, but they weren't Detroit kind of bad.
No, there's actually some people out there I read that were saying that Montreal and Ottawa are ahead of schedule of a team like Toronto. Like they're going the right way. They're doing it the right way. Even though might be longer before they're at Toronto's level, but they're going to blow by Toronto at that point, they think. And I'm like, interesting thought process. It
wouldn't be hard to blow by a team that can't win in the first round. So. There's,
there's that thought process, but yeah.
All right. Well, the other thing is that Ottawa's going to have to actually pay the players when they become UFAs. They got to,
Yeah, luckily for them, they already paid Thomas Chabot, so there's one big name out of the way.
Thomas Chabot is out of the way. There were a whole bunch of trades that Nick Bonino going to the Minnesota Wild and all the kind of inconsequential type of moves that what's Nick Bonino really going to do for the Minnesota Wild? Not a whole lot, but it's just so many guys signing. Where do we want to go next? Let's go.
Let's stick with the goalies.
Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about Henrik Lundqvist, right? And going to Washington, because that was one of the first signings that happened during the day.
Yes, there you go.
It's weird to me because I always find it odd because teams will come out and say, we're not talking to guys beforehand, but yet guys will literally sign 2 minutes in. And you're like, you had
you were talking
30 seconds to negotiate, and you came to a deal. Like, come on, wink, wink. You were talking behind closed doors. Lundqvist, in my mind was an example. Obviously, the one guy that signed, I think, quicker than him was Wayne Simmons, but I think he had already made up in his mind that's where he wanted to go regardless.
Yeah, I think Wayne Simmons signed by like 3 p.m., 4 p.m. or something like that.
Quicker than that, like literally just like 12:01. He signed, like it was official, but. I'm interested, to see how this Lundqvist thing works out. I obviously thought Khudobin would be, the guy that would sign with, Washington. I wasn't 100% sure what New York was going to do with Lundqvist. At some point it became obvious, I think a week ago, that they were buying him out. Yeah. So you're like, okay, cool. Now he could maybe be a fit for Colorado.
Well, with Lundqvist, because he was bought out, he was free to talk to teams.
Sure.
So that's why it was a little fat. Like he didn't have to wait.
Yeah, but even Washington's just. It's an interesting spot for me because I figured they would want somebody a little bit more longer term to be like a 1B, right? Get somebody locked in for 2-3 years now. Because again, the other thing you have to consider is expansion, right? Like we saw a lot of 2-year deals handed out yesterday, and that's because of expansion. You want to have your roster to the,
padded essentially.
Yeah, so that you can protect some guys and then you expose others. And so like, for instance, from a goaltender perspective, Anton Khudobin signed for another 3 years with Dallas, which is great, good for him. I think he got good term, good money.
I believe that was that's
you did
the
say,
spot that I thought that he might sign.
Yeah, you said he was going to stay there, and I said he was going to leave, and so kudos to you. But again, it's a great spot for Khudobin because why would you?
I think you did call Cam Talbot in Minnesota though.
No, I said he'd go to Detroit for Detroit. 4-4, but I'm not too far off when it comes to Minnesota. I'll talk about them in a second, but. As far as Washington's concerned, obviously they're going to want to protect Samsonov when the expansion drafts happen, but now they don't really have another goalie to offer up, right? So now you've got to go out and you've got to re-sign another guy. So I figured they would go lock somebody up, for 2 or 3 years.
Well, they have Phoenix Copley.
Sure. But, again.
I would imagine that he would be the guy that they would expose.
Maybe, but I think you have to have 3 goaltenders. No, wait, it's 2. I'm sorry. Yeah, you have to have 2 goaltenders under contract. But... So, yeah, I'm just surprised they didn't get somebody more longer term, for 2 or 3 years to be a backup and a mentor to Samsonov because I don't think, he's going to explode after this season and, then you don't have to worry about your backup position. So,
well, but maybe with Lundqvist, you're thinking there's a possibility that he does another 1-year deal the following year. Like that's probably on the table.
Yeah, I think so too. But, and then, again, this is going to be a great fit for him. He goes to a place where they're still ready to compete. They're still able to compete for a cup. He gets in a great mentorship role where he can, bring up this young Russian goaltender, just like he did in New York. And also, too, I think with the condensed schedule, there's going to be a lot of back-to-backs. And I think he's going to get a real opportunity to play at least 30 to 40 games, assuming we're having a full 82 season. Yeah. So, and then when you move on to Cam Talbot, right, there's another one. Thought he was going to go to Detroit for 4 for 4. He ended up going to Minnesota for 3 years. I was actually really shocked with this one, almost more than any other goaltending signing outside of Matt Murray, because Minnesota was a team, I think they're ready to compete now, but they still have some younger guys, that they're bringing up. I figured Minnesota would want to lock in a goaltender long term, right? Get a guy who's like an actual number one.
Well, 3 years is...
Sure.
You look at the deals and the term handed out to these goalies. There's only really, in the last year, there's only been 3 goaltending contracts that have been longer than 3 years. That's 8 years to Vasilevsky, 5 years to Leonard, and 6 years to Markstrom.
Yeah, my thought process with Minnesota was they've moved on from Dubnyk. You have to go solidify, the number one position. And I don't think Stalock is a guy that, over the next couple of years, you're going to say he's going to give us 30, 40 games. I think you want somebody else to take those reins. Now, they do have their young goaltender, Kakkonen. I'm not sure what the feeling is on him. He's still an RFA. What kind of deal are they going to get done with him at this point at 24? You either have to say, okay, this is going to be our guy or not. And by signing Talbot for 3 years, and you still got Stalock under contract, but, he's cheap. You can trade him. Obviously they'll probably expose Talbot at the expansion draft, but
yeah, I think that's a fair thought.
But still, I was expecting them to go out and make a move for, Holtby, a Markstrom, or somebody else.
Yeah, obviously Holtby didn't want to sign there.
No. But, I guess it is what it is. You take what you can get, and they still got a serviceable 1B type of goaltender, I think, who will give you a solid 30, 40 games.
Yeah, I also think that, I don't know, Minnesota is a team that should be trying to push for the playoffs. In my mind, they should be trying to maybe build up their storage cupboards a little bit. I know I've talked about it before, but just Minnesota always is that middling team. They never have a superstar, and the reason why, they've never been bad enough. They've been bad, but never enough.
Right.
And enough times, yeah.
Yeah, Boudreaux, for whatever reason, he always managed to get them at the top of that division, but they would bow out in the first.
Yep.
So,
well, the other 3 big goaltender signings. Jacob Markstrom signs in Calgary, 6 years, $6 million a season. And then Braden Holtby signs in Vancouver. It seemed like the Flames were just hacking away at the Vancouver roster. I think they also got Chris Tanev sign him. And then Corey Crawford signs with the New Jersey Devils, 2 years, $3.9 million a season, as they buy out Corey Schneider and bring in another broken goaltender, Corey Crawford.
Yeah, at least when Corey Crawford's healthy, he's going to win games and give you good goaltending. Whereas Corey Schneider
hasn't been good in like 3-4 years.
Right. And you know what? Maybe Corey Schneider goes out and finds another home and can be, a number 2 goaltender somewhere. I doubt it, but he'll probably take a year off and maybe go play overseas. Who knows? Whatever.
Just call it a career.
Yeah, maybe do that too. But I like the Jacob Markstrom move because I think since Kiprusoff, they've been searching for a number 1 goaltender. Obviously, 6 years, you're saying this is the guy. And let's face it, Markstrom was the MVP for Vancouver last season, this past year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, he looked great in the playoffs. Stole a few games that maybe they probably should have lost, and that's what you want out of a starting goaltender. And so Calgary gets that guy that they need long term, and hopefully, at 30 years old for 6 more years, you're still going to get, maybe really good years out of all those.
I mean, if 2 years ago you said, "Hey, I'm pretty sure that when both Markstrom and Holtby are UFAs together, Markstrom's going to get more money and 3 times the term that Braden Holtby's going to get," you'd go, "You're nuts."
Right.
Like Braden Holtby's going to get $8-9 million, and he's going to get his full maybe 6-7 year contract. No, not even close.
Yeah, but I mean, Vancouver obviously.
Good on Vancouver to like.
Yeah, I mean they were probably sticking with their guns and saying we don't want to give you long-term deal because we've got these 2 young guys. So maybe that was their thought.
And Holtby hasn't been very good.
No,
you're giving him this money in hopes that he can in a different system and in a different just a change of scenery that he can kind of turn it around and get back to where he was 3 years ago.
Right.
Which we have seen goaltenders do into their 30s. I mean, he's only 31. I mean, he's not. I read something that was talking about it, and the way that the writer was talking about Holtby being 31 was like he was ancient. Like there are plenty of goaltenders who, I mean, Anton Khudobin's 34. Markstrom, he's only a year younger than Holtby. Crawford's 35. Like, you can be a good goalie and be in your 30s. It's okay. There's always a point where particular players are going to start to downslide, but Braden Holtby, I think he's got a shot to maybe revive his career in Vancouver, and we'll see. Yeah, even if he's just okay, they can get out from under that deal, no problem. They could trade him.
Well, even if he's just okay, you're still okay with that deal because
you've got other guys.
DiPietro's still 2 years away from his RFA deal. You've got one more year, Demko at $1 million. So, again, they're not hurt or strapped financially with their goaltending situation. And
$5.3 million in your goaltending.
Yeah, and with goaltenders too now, because you're looking for a 1A, 1B situation, most teams are. You don't have to worry about a guy playing 60, 70 games anymore. So, those older goaltenders like Holtby in their 30s, those ancient quote-unquote goaltenders, they're not going to decline as quickly as maybe a defenseman who's playing 28 minutes a night and is 35 years old. Now, there's those rare freaks like Ryan Suter who can do that. But,
sure.
Most of the guys, can't do that anymore. I mean, speak of Vancouver, Elder's one of those guys that, his ice time's got to get cut down because he's 34 and just can't keep up as much anymore. Yeah. But, on the flip side, now we talk about Corey Crawford. I thought this was a good deal. You get a veteran guy to come in and really help push Blackwood, because I think ideally they want Blackwood to be the guy.
Sure.
And I think that's totally fine. I'm okay with that.
But I think that if you're New Jersey, you're happy to go 45 and 38, whatever.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Why would you not want to give a guy who, when healthy, has proved he's a very good goaltender?
He's a serviceable goal. Yeah. He's definitely he has the ability to be an above average goalie.
Yeah, so why not? And I'm surprised actually from Chicago's standpoint that they were so I don't know if maybe there was a breakdown in contract talks, or maybe they were just completely adamant about, hey, we're going with the younger guys, but like Malcolm Subban, hate him. I don't think he's going to be a very good goaltender. He'll be a number 3 goaltender for the rest of his career, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with that.
They're goaltenders, though. I mean, Malcolm Subban's what, 26?
Yeah. No, I think he's actually older than that. Let me look this up. Yeah, he's 26. You're right. Okay.
26 years old. We have seen goaltenders go from being just maybe he's a career backup, is what you're saying.
And Jacob Markstrom was one of those.
Jacob Markstrom, he was very highly touted. He's like a first round pick.
Well, so was Malcolm Subban too.
Malcolm Subban was a first round pick?
Yeah, I think he was a first round pick by the Bruins.
Oh, I didn't know he was a first round pick.
24th overall in 2012. Yeah.
All right, there you go.
Maybe PK had something to do with that. But.
Yeah. But I also, sometimes a goalie, they dink around. Look at, Khudobin. He was never anything special, and now he's 34 years old. He has the best season of his career. No, I'd say the last 3 years, 3 years, he's been good, and people have started to notice him. When he was coming in and he took over for Rask when he went down a couple years ago, you went, oh, this guy's actually all right. But maybe it's just because Boston's so good. And then, Khudobin goes to Dallas, and he basically becomes the best backup in the NHL, and he gets his starting opportunity, and he does great in the playoffs. He definitely was not the reason that Dallas did not win the cup against Tampa. Well, let's move on from the goaltending. Wayne Simmons signs in Toronto. That was like the first deal of the day. No big surprise that Wayne Simmons goes and signs in his hometown. I believe Scarborough is where he was originally from. Although he did say in an interview that the Detroit Red Wings were actually the team that he cheered for growing up as a kid.
He's like, that was funny. I know they're going to hate me for this.
Yeah.
I chuckled a little bit then.
I think that's a good move for Toronto. $1.5 million. I mean, the worst. There really is no downside. It's like that Jason Spezza kind of deal. Like, hey, we'll see if Spezza works out, and if he doesn't, you can always not play him. At $1.5 million, you can bury almost the whole thing in the minors, and you can call it good. But I mean, I think that Wayne Simmons is worth 1.5.
Yeah,
even if he's playing on the fourth line, he's worth 1.5.
I mean, look at it. He's a few years removed from a 24, 31, 32 goal seasons. So even at 32 years old, he's still
got hands.
Yeah, he's still not that old to where you're like, okay, literally he's just going to be a fourth line guy. He still brings a physical element. He still brings a nice leadership element that'll be great for that room. And maybe you get 8 goals like he had last year. Maybe you get 15. If you get 15, that's freaking fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, he had 16 goals in 62 games just a year removed from that.
Yeah, he can be a 30-point guy and playing on that third line, and that would be fantastic for Toronto.
Yeah.
So
get Spezza and Simmons. Who else can play on the fourth line for Toronto? That is a reclamation project.
Right.
Just needs somebody on the.
They can go sign Justin Abdelkader next.
There you go. There you go. I thought one signing that kind of slid under the radar. It happened beforehand because it's an RFA, but Jesse Puljujarvi agreeing to a deal with the Edmonton Oilers after so much. I mean, he played in the KHL last year or whatever league he played in overseas.
Yeah.
And it sounded like they were done with each other. There was a lot of rumors with him going to Montreal, I remember, and he ends up re-signing in Edmonton. And I wonder if it was all right, now I see what this team has become. Like, Ken Holland, I'm sure, has done some good things internally. And I wonder if, they needed a year apart and then now a different management, different team, and Ken Holland's able to go smooth the waters with Puljujarvi. I think that is a huge step in the right direction for the Oilers, and maybe it's an under the radar kind of signing. Puljujarvi he was a 4th overall pick.
Yeah,
I mean, he's got potential to come in.
He's still 22 years old.
Yeah, I mean, he could come in and put up some big points and maybe play alongside Connor McDavid. That is the elusive thing that you're always looking for. I feel like for his entire life, it's like Crosby. Can you find him a winger? And I mean, he's sure, he plays with
Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is a winger now for him.
Yeah, or Draisaitl will play alongside. But can you find him an actual winger? Not like, hey, let's just load up a whole line. That'll be the question his whole entire career.
Yeah, I think Puljujarvi will get a chance to start with McDavid. Obviously, Yamamoto was another young guy that they had drafted high, that they were expecting big things out of. Took a little time to develop, but now he's stuck with Draisaitl, and they seem to have a really good fit together, a good pair there. And so that's what you're hoping for with McDavid, is to find another good pair, so you just don't have, obviously you can throw Nugent Hopkins up on that first line and then put Puljujarvi on the other wing, but I think, that's probably the plan going in, which is why, again, there's another signing they made, with Kyle Turris, right? There's another really, low cost, high reward type of signing at $1.65 million for a couple seasons to get a third line center. So, they bring back Tyler Ennis. I think Edmonton made a couple nice small moves to where you're not hurting yourself financially.
Sure.
And, you're giving yourself an opportunity to see these guys maybe take another step. And, for Turris, there's a reclamation project, a guy that just didn't have a good fit in Nashville. And so, you come to,
maybe he hasn't been good in like 5 years.
I know, but maybe, because again, with those big contracts, you're expected to do a lot more, and so they're kind of forcing your hand to play these big minutes, and so maybe he isn't anything more than a third line guy that can put up 40 points at the most. So now you throw him in Edmonton, where he's definitely protected behind McDavid and Draisaitl. Sure. He'll get maybe some second power play time, and maybe Puljujarvi plays on his wing, and you get a good pairing there. But
I guess in fairness, he is just 3 seasons removed from a 51-point season.
Sure.
So it's not like he's
been that terrible for long.
I mean, he had 31 points in 62 games. So
yeah, and I think that's what Edmonton's hoping to get out of him, is 30, 35 points.
And in 62 games. So he would have put up 40 this year if he had gotten the chance to play those games. But even so, he puts up some points. But there was a lot to be desired for the rest of his game as well.
No, absolutely.
Poyarvi, by the way, put up about a point per game in the Liga. It's just where he played, not the KHL. I knew I was wrong in the KHL.
It was somewhere overseas.
And right now, in 3 games, he's got 3 goals and 4 points. So, doing well as he continues to play. He can play until the NHL comes back. So, who knows when the heck that'll be. One other signing that I loved, Alexander Wenberg signing with the Florida Panthers, a 1-year, $2.25 million deal. A guy who was supposed to be a top-line center for the Columbus Blue Jackets is a free agent, and they signed Wenberg. And I love this deal. I think that
tell me why.
Well,
Please.
I think that he could go. He could go into Florida. Again, like similar idea. You know, he had a $4.9 million cap hit. It was a 6-year deal, and obviously there was a lot of pressure from the Blue Jackets organization to be very good. He put up almost 60 points in 2016-17, and since then he really just hasn't been very good. He is not a goal scorer at all. Can't shoot the puck or doesn't shoot the puck. Actually had an okay playoff. Had 5 points in the 10 games in the playoffs. But I think that he, given the right opportunity and the right system, I mean, we know what... oh my gosh, I'm blanking on Florida's coach.
Oh, Quinville.
Yeah, we know what he's capable of doing with some guys down the roster and bringing guys up. I actually see Alexander Wenberg as Florida's Patrick Sharp.
Okay, interesting.
If you can bring him in and put him into the right spot, I think you can move him up into the lineup and move him around. I don't think that he's probably going to ever put up 50, 60 points again. But hey, at $2.25 million, you're going to be happy if you can get a guy who can play on your third line and put up 30, 40 points. And I do think that he's still capable of that. So,
yeah, I think they ideally want him to be their second line center, right? I think they want him to go out and say, "Hey, prove it to me."
That'd be great.
Yeah,
that would be great. I don't know if he's not the fastest player. I don't know if he's in a position to really be a second line center. But I do really like what Florida did, bringing in Hinostroza and signing Radko Gudas on that back end. Like they've brought in some big boys. And
yeah, I'm iffy on Gudas, but
I mean, what's there to be iffy about? You know he's going to get suspended, but.
Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like having some grit on that back end, but I think for me, I would have ideally liked to have seen, them go out and maybe get a Sammy Vatanen or a puck moving type defenseman.
Well, yeah, sure.
So,
who wouldn't?
Yeah,
who
but
wouldn't want to get that guy?
Look, Sammy Vatanen's sitting out there in free agency. Why wouldn't you sign him? But again, maybe he doesn't want to go there. But I just think they need a little bit more of that. I think they have plenty of grit in terms of. A guy like, Mackenzie Weegar, who I think they'll re-sign. Strawman, they got that defensive defenseman there. And, they got the puck mover and Keith Yandel, but I think they could use another one personally.
Okay.
But that's just me. Okay. Again, I don't mind the Gouda signing at the price. I think, at $2-ish million, he's a very serviceable third pairing guy.
Yeah, third pairing, exactly.
Yeah.
Third pairing who can move up he can kill penalties.
Absolutely.
Move up onto that second pairing if you need him to. Also, one other signing that the Panthers made that I really like, Carter Verhaeghe, buried a little bit in Tampa's system and didn't really get a whole lot of opportunity to play for the Lightning. And sometimes you get those guys who, they're on a good team, they're buried somewhere, they go become a free agent, they sign somewhere else. I think of like a Derek Ryan in Calgary going and signing there and kind of found his game and found the way that he can play. I think Carter Verhaeghe could be a little underrated signing here for the Florida Panthers.
All right, yeah.
2 years, $2 million, like $1 million a season. Can't go wrong with that.
Nola Achari, they're pretty good at finding those low-cost guys that produce. So
who come from good teams.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so one question I want to ask you, because this one's been sitting on my mind since we started the show. TJ Brody in Toronto. I want to get your thoughts on this because I like Toronto's top three now with Muzzin, Riley, and TJ Brody. But, obviously that means they were rumored to be in with that Pietrangelo race. And, obviously they're out of it now at this point. But,
well, yeah, I mean, Pietrangelo wasn't. I mean, he wanted more than 8 times 8.
Sure, yeah.
Toronto could not. I don't think Toronto was ever in it.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. And I don't think...
I think that probably an agent put it out there, or it's, hey, he's from Toronto, and someone says, would you want him on your team? And you go, yeah, we'd love to have him. Sure, we're going to try to get him.
Well, I'm sure they probably had a conversation, but...
Yeah, of course you're going to try to get him, but you don't have the money. No. There is not the money to acquire a player.
Right, you would have to move some guys out, like a Nylander at that point.
He's not worth it. Not over the next 7 years. It's not worth it.
No, and that's fair. That's fair. But when shifting back to Brody, though, I love what they get out of this guy because he is going to bring them more grit on the back end. He's going to bring them more of a defensive edge, and he's still capable of being a 30-point guy.
Sure.
So, and especially now, and he was playing on a team in Calgary, putting up 34, 36 points with 1 or 2 offensive weapons. Now he has a whole load of offensive weapons to to move the puck up to. So, maybe his point production goes up a little bit, which would be fantastic to see him hit 40 points. But more than anything else, I think you're hoping his defensive game still is just as sound.
Yeah, I'm wondering who. I'm assuming he'd play with Morgan Riley is my guess. He played very well. Probably, I think his best seasons and the best time that he's been, when he's been very good, he's been playing with Mark Giordano. And I think that if he can continue playing with high end talent, like he's just one of those guys. I think that when you put him with really good players, he shines.
He's like Chris Tanev, I think. You paired him with, Quinn Hughes last year, and he shined so well because he was able to just stay at home, be a rock.
Let the other guy be as good as they are.
Right.
And you're going to pick up some extras along the way. And I think that that's exactly what Brody will be. So, yeah, I don't think that a Brody-Muzzin pairing would be great for just 5-on-5 because you've kind of got these two more defensive, hard-nosed guys. You probably want to split them up. But, Brody. Brody is a left-handed shot, but he plays right defense.
Right.
So that's good for more. Babcock's not here, so it won't matter.
Right. Well, that's good for Morgan Riley anyways. So,
right.
Because he plays on the left side. So, the other defenseman that got signed, late last night, Torrey Krug in St. Louis.
Yes.
Obviously shutting the door for Pietrangelo to come back to St. Louis, even though I think like literally right before Krug got signed, there was a tweet that came out that says, I'm not closing the book on them. We're still having talks. I think this was a situation where St. Louis got nervous that they were going to miss out on a defenseman because you don't want to go into next season with, obviously Colton Parayko is a good defenseman, but you don't want him to be your number one with Justin Falk and Vince Dunn. That's not what you want.
You just don't want that top 4. The top 4 wouldn't be.
And Scandella,
Colton Parayko, I think, is great.
Yeah, he is. He's a very good defenseman.
I'm okay with taking him as my top defenseman, but I need to have 3 other good defensemen.
Right. Well, that's the thing. And so, obviously, you bring in a guy like Torrey Krug now who, gives you more of a puck-moving guy. Now, obviously, I think at some point here, relatively soon, they're going to have to, I would think, maybe move Scandella because I just think, investing that kind of money in their back end like they have now at this point, makes maybe one other guy expendable. Because I don't want to have, ideally, Vince Dunn's going to get a little bit of a raise, but I don't want to have, 5 guys at, $3+ million. You don't want to.
You just signed Marco Scandella.
I know, but I think maybe after the season you have to really look at moving him. I think. I don't know.
Right now they're over the cap already.
Yeah, well, they're going to throw Tarasenko on long term. Injury reserve, so they'll get some relief there. But at this point, I like the term, I like the money for a guy like Krug, who I think deserves it. He's very capable of putting up 50, 60 points, quarterbacking that top power play for this team. Again, he's a left-handed defenseman. Or I'm sorry, is he left-handed?
Left. He's left. Yep.
He plays on the left side.
Play with Parayko up there. He can always. Yeah. You could have a Justin Falk, Torrey Krug power play.
Yeah.
There's lots and lots of options. I think, I don't see Pietrangelo signing with St. Louis now.
No, it's impossible.
Even though they're talking about, it's not dead.
You'd have to get somebody to grab Justin Falk for you, and then you could maybe make that happen. But My question to you is, now that St. Louis is pretty much gone, where does a guy like Alex Pietrangelo sign?
Yeah, I think that Vegas is a good landing spot. I think that they would love to bring in a superstar, especially after watching Vegas trade away Paul Stastny. I think that granted, obviously much different positions, but I think you look at where they've been spending their money. That's a big cap hit off your books with Stastny, and so I think that they, in my mind, are the most likely to go after him. Now, granted, I know they've got less than $2 million in cap space right now, but remember that Marc-Andre Fleury is gone. He will be traded at some point. At least, half of his. I would guess that they're going to look and try to move his entire deal. They don't want to hold on to any of his cap hit.
Yeah, ideally you don't want to. Sure.
And I think they'll be able to find a willing combatant in that. They'll find somebody who's willing to do it. And to me, if they were to land Pietrangelo, they, like, when you look at their defense, you go, okay, Shea Theodore, he's evolved into a fantastic defenseman. Nate Schmidt is so important for their defense. And then beyond that, Alec Martinez, he's still a good defenseman. He's still a top 4 defenseman. He's not one of the best top 4 defensemen in the NHL by any means, though. And then you kind of have this, kind of a ragtag rest of your group. And I think that if you were to sign Pietrangelo, then that kind of slots everybody a little more properly. And suddenly you have one of the best defenses in the league.
Yeah. With
the one signing, at least for the next 2 or 3 years. So.
Yeah, Vegas would be obviously one of my front runners, I would think, too. I think if they do sign him, obviously Fleury's the contract you want out, but I think if they can't move that, they'll try to move either maybe a Nate Schmidt, a Marcia Shower, Riley Smith. They'll try to get one of those out of there too. But he would be that guy they've been looking for. And it's funny, I think whenever I think of Vegas, they always seem to be in the run for a Stanley Cup since they've been in existence, and it always seems like they're always going after a top name. Every single offseason, every single trade deadline. And I'm like, at one point, you have to say, Vegas, listen, you have to suck at some point. Like, just give it up. Like, stop.
They're not going to.
So, good on them. Another team wouldn't shock me if they make a play, especially after losing out on Tanev, would be Vancouver. They could definitely use another big-name guy back there. Obviously, a Quinn Hughes extension is coming at some point, but outside of that, they really don't have money invested in defense outside of Tyler Myers. So, that would be a wise.
Edler's only got 1 year left on his deal, and they do have almost $8 million in cap space, so they definitely could maneuver, and be able to give him the money. Now, see, I think that for Pietrangelo going somewhere else, like if he doesn't want to take 8 times 8, then he's not probably looking for let's say a team said, well, we'll give you 10 times 4.
Okay.
I don't think he'd take it.
You don't think he would?
I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, but for 8 years, you're guaranteeing yourself $64 million, and then now you're only guaranteeing yourself 40. I don't think that you're going to make that type of move unless you really, really thought that team was going to win the Stanley Cup. And I don't think that Vancouver is quite there yet where they're going to be in the Stanley Cup contention, given another year or two after this one. And by that point, is it, for Pietrangelo, does it make sense?
Yeah. Let me throw out another team here too, because this is just, I guess maybe I haven't heard their name in the mix, and we know, Boston will try to throw their name in the hat, with a guy like Pietrangelo, especially after losing Krug. But what about the Edmonton Oilers? I think,
wow,
they've got what? I think like $7 million. Okay, $5.2 million right now in cap space. They've got 2 guys coming off the books after this season that they could probably move. I think one of them, Adam Larson, you could probably find a team desperate enough for a right-handed shot defenseman that could say, okay, cool, we'll take him off your hands. Maybe, you give them a 3rd or 4th round pick, and then you get a 7th round pick back, but you get him off the books essentially, right?
Yeah.
Chris Russell's coming off the books, so you could afford an extension with this guy. And then, now you've got Nurse, Clefbaum when healthy, and Pietrangelo, and then you've got a couple young guys like Ethan Bear that, could make up a pretty dangerous back end for a team that's got plenty of forwards.
I would wonder about the Boston Bruins. They lose Torrey Krug. They've got $15 million in cap space. The Boston Bruins, they could go in and lock up Pietrangelo at $9 million.
Yeah, you could easily do that. Obviously, it's going to be nice when Krejci's money comes off the books next season.
Right. I mean, and you can move Krejci, or you just go, okay, well, after this year, I mean, we've got $43 million in cap space next year. Granted, we have no goaltending.
Right.
But I mean, Boston's going to have to do something here. They haven't really made much of a splash.
Yeah. I saw, I can't remember what the beat writer was for the Boston Bruins, out of what paper or publication he does, but he was just literally just posting, like waiting, like just sitting around. Like,
they re-signed Yaroslav Halak. That's literally all they've done.
I mean, yeah, you gave him a 1-year extension, but they can go out and they'll figure out their goaltending situation after this year. And, obviously there's been rumors of Tuukka Rask being traded or retiring or whatever. But that aside, I still think you could use a guy like that, because Charlie McAvoy is going to be good. I mean, he still is good. At 22 years old, he's still got time to even get better.
Sure.
But it's uncertain, right?
Unlike Jack Johnson signing with the Rangers. He's not going to get better.
Yeah. So, getting a for sure number one defenseman every team would want that. So, but, and then of course there's other teams, like you could throw Ottawa and Detroit, in there, that guys that might make a pitch for him. But, if you're Pietrangelo, you're not going to want to go there, I don't think, right now. So, no. Yeah, go to a team that's competing for a cup.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he goes. And then the other big free agent, of course, is Taylor Hall.
Yeah.
Who's still sitting out there. And those two are going to, that's what's going to change the course of the following season. And actually, you brought up Sammy Vatanen. I'd say that Sammy Vatanen could certainly solidify a team and take a team from a bubble team to potentially competing and winning some rounds, or a team that is we could win some rounds, to becoming a Stanley Cup contender by shoring up a top four. So definitely Pietrangelo and Taylor Hall, and if somehow you can convince Dustin Byfuglien to come back and play hockey, somebody should be out there trying to.
I know, knocking on his door, because he can still. I mean, the one team that I'm waiting. Obviously Boston hasn't done anything, but Colorado, right? They signed Burakovsky, their RFA. They gave him a 2-year extension into free agency at 4.9, and that's a fine deal. I don't mind it, especially at that 2-year term, because you got to think long term with McDavid, his extension that they're going to need to eventually sign him for. But for a 45-point guy in 58 games, I think that's pretty good value if you can get anywhere close to that again.
Yeah.
But they have money, available. I think like $20-some million. Okay, well now they're down to 17.4 after that signing, but still they have an opportunity to make a splash, and they're in a small window right now where they've got a lot of young defensemen, on these entry-level deals where they can go out and make a splash. Maybe you offer a guy like Taylor Hall 2 years at, $8.59 million. You overpay for him, but now you've got a dangerous second-line winger for a couple more seasons.
Not far removed from an MVP season.
Right.
So. Also, Thomas Greiss closing in on a deal with the Edmonton Oilers.
Okay, yeah, that's a good signing. That'll be good, because again, Koskinen to me is not a 1A. He's a 1B at best, and I'm not even sure I like him as that. So, so Greiss he'll be a nice piece. I mean, obviously, I don't think at this point Edmonton was going to go and snag a top goaltender after Markstrom went off the market. So,
right. And it sounds like, we had talked about Edmonton and Pietrangelo. Of course, there's the OEL, is that the trade rumor that it's been involved with Vancouver, Arizona, talking about moving him. Supposedly, that deal is now falling apart.
Yeah, he did.
And now Darcy Kemper is the one on the block.
Yeah,
they have to cut $15 million in payroll.
Yeah, they're going to cut money somewhere, but OEL with his deal, it was basically, he said by free agency noon yesterday, if there wasn't a deal in place, he was going to put back his no movement clause in there, and he wasn't going anywhere, and they didn't get anything done.
He extended it supposedly, though.
Okay.
Because they had a deal going, but now it sounds like that's...
And I do think there's always going to be... They'll still probably have some talks, I think, during the course of the season, and, maybe they'll try to work something out, but I think for now he's just going to be focused on playing hockey.
Is there any team that you think that has in these signings so far, has maybe changed their fortunes at all? They taken them to like a team that you didn't think was a playoff team, and now you look at what they did at the draft, and you look at what they did on free agency day, and now you say they're a playoff team, or vice versa.
Yeah, I don't really know if there's maybe one team that changed their fortunes, tremendously. I think there were some teams that made improvements. Obviously, I think, a team like, Edmonton, I think they went in there, and to me, they maybe had the best signings because they got guys that can, add such value at low contracts that I think maybe those might be the best signings of the day for me. Obviously they didn't go out and address their backup goaltender situation, but it sounds like they have now. Outside of that, there really weren't any monumental signings or moves where I thought, okay, cool, you put your team over the top at this point.
Yeah, there really has. I mean, I guess from a goaltending perspective, you could say there.
Maybe Markstrom was the best one, but
yeah, some of those moves have the potential to really change, but it's not like Calgary. Do I think that Markstrom's going to go into Calgary and now Calgary's going to win the cup because they got Markstrom? No.
Right, exactly.
No, I don't. Torrey Krug might be the biggest signing thus far.
Yeah, and I mean
he really is a guy who could put up 60 points.
Yeah, but honestly, if you look at it from an aspect of, okay, we lost Pietrangelo and we signed Krug,
sure,
you're not getting equal value.
Lateral.
Yeah, you got a guy who's slightly less in terms of what I'm going to get, but he's still pretty dang good. So,
Yep. We're waiting on Taylor Hall and Pietrangelo.
Tyler Toffoli. I mean, there's a lot of, Mike Hoffman.
Yeah.
Still the best goal scorer out there with 29 goals, and he hasn't. I'm sure there's something going on, but I haven't heard a peep out of his camp.
There's Tyson Barrie's out there, and Alex Galchenyuk, Sami Vatanen. I mean, there's still some decent guys that are out there. I actually think that Tyler Toffoli will re-sign to Vancouver. I think the Vancouver's just been probably said, hey, just hold on a second, let us maneuver here, and we're going to give you a contract. I think now that money for Tanev's off the books, if they don't take a swing at Pietrangelo, now they've got the money to do it. So, and he was a good fit for them. So yeah, he was a great fit. I mean, he looked better than he has in years. So.
Right.
All right. Well, that's our show. We will continue to keep analyzing these deals as they come in, and you can follow us on Twitter for a more rapid fire. quick fingered analyzation of those at OT Hockey Talk. Justin, any final thoughts before we kick it?
Yeah, I want to see somebody make a big signing here today. So we had a bunch of them. Obviously, you get a ton of signings, but I want to see just a big name. I don't want to see this lull of just like now you won't get a big name signed for a couple more days kind of situation. Let's see somebody signed like Haller, Pietrangelo. Let's see it.
Yeah, let's go. I want to see a team that you would never expect to sign one of those guys. I want them to sign
or I want a big trade like Steven Stamkos getting dealt. That's been rumored for a while, so let's do it.
Yeah, I think that the New Jersey Devils, I want to see that. I think that they could go out and not sign Taylor Hall. He's not going back to New Jersey,
no.
but like the New Jersey Devils with the Buffalo Sabres, where's their money at?
There you go.
They all have more than $20 million in cap space. Let's do something. Although COVID might have killed that. So. Okay, we'll talk to you guys soon.